Let's keep going with day 4, which is how to object. Now, there are many opportunities in a relationship to voice objections because, there's so many times where our mate does something that we don't like or we don't appreciate. And so it's important to not only object, but to object in an effective way. Being able to make objections effectively is a critical communication skill. Effective objections allow problems to be resolved, whereas ignoring problems allows them to fester and will eventually cause fights. I realize that many people don't like conflict, and so they stuff down those feelings and emotions and think that they can ignore them and that'll make the problem go away, but it doesn't. It festers within them, and then it comes out, and it's usually much uglier because it's festered and it's grown inside of them. So we need to learn how to effectively object whenever the issue is new and fresh, and so we don't allow it to get out of hand inside of us. John Gottman, who you see to the left here, is a marriage expert, a psychologist, and kind of the go-to guy on research as far as marriages go, and happy marriages, and also marriages that don't end up well. He's done a ton of research on why people get divorced, for instance. He's written many books, lots of publications. One of them is The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. But in this particular book, he talks about a way to object when we're not happy, and it follows a formula. So if you look in the smaller box there on the right-hand side, the formula to an effective objection is that we start with "I felt." In other words, we just explain an emotion that we're feeling because the other person has done something that we don't like or hurts us. So I feel this emotion. When you, then we state whatever the action was that happened, and then we propose an alternate action. So I would like it if in the future you would do this. So once again, I felt this emotion when you did this, and here's what I would like to propose you could do in the future. I want you to notice right from the beginning, instead of saying you did this, or you hurt me, or you were wrong when you, an effective objection starts with I. And I felt. It's just simply explaining our own feelings and emotions without immediately criticizing the other person. This is called a soft startup or soft warm-up into this particular kind of conversation. For example, I felt taken advantage of when you didn't take out the trash in time for the garbage truck. I had to rush outside the snow in my bare feet to wave for the driver to stop. And I would like it in the future if you would make yourself reminders to take out the trash on time. So within this short example, there's the 3 parts. First, the way you express your feelings. So I felt taken advantage of. Okay, so that's the feeling or emotion taken advantage of. And then secondly, the way you describe the other person's action. So I felt taken advantage of when you didn't take the trash out in time for the garbage truck. And then thirdly is this alternate proposal that you make for the next time. So I would like it if in the future you would make yourself reminders to take out the trash on time.
Now, in doing so, the speaker totally avoided some major pitfalls in communication. And we're going to talk about these as our sessions go on here, but I'll briefly mention some of them now.
Now, these are, in order, examples of criticism, superiority, and defensiveness. And these behaviors are among 3 of 4 things that John Gottman links with the predictability of whether a marriage is going to end up in divorce or not. If there's a lot of criticism, superiority, and defensiveness, and one other thing, stonewalling, that we'll talk about later on, if these are in the relationship, John Gottman has actually predicted that by extensive survey that there's like a 97% chance of the couple getting a divorce. So back to our example of an objection. The speaker said, "I feel taken advantage of." Now, sometimes if we weren't taught about communication, we express our needs using different language. And instead of saying, "I feel taken advantage of," we might wrongly say things like, "You're taking advantage of me," which is a criticism, or "Of course you didn't take out the trash," which is a statement of superiority, putting ourselves like we're superior to the other person, like we would never do something like that, but you, of course, do. And then thirdly, defensiveness is, "I always do the laundry. Why can't you take out the trash?" So what makes "I feel taken advantage of" the right thing to say, as opposed to these other examples, is that it focuses purely on what the speaker is experiencing. Again, what the speaker is experiencing is, as opposed to us accusing the other person of doing something wrong. So the trash wasn't taken out, and it caused the speaker to feel taken advantage of. But that doesn't mean that the listener is necessarily taking advantage of her. It doesn't presume laziness on the part of the listener, and it doesn't make veiled accusations of unfairness, all of which are hidden meanings of the other responses. It simply is saying, "This is how I felt." So this way of speaking is called using I statements. They're called I statements because they focus on the way I feel as opposed to what you did wrong. A quick clarification here is that some kinds of critical statements can masquerade as I statements and can cause harm. For instance, consider the statement, "I feel like this is a stupid plan." Well, of course, this is not an I statement, even though it has the word I in it. It's not an I statement because it's really just masquerading for a way to criticize the other person. Again, because the words, "this is a stupid plan," is a thought, not a feeling. It's not describing how the person is feeling or the emotion. It's just simply putting a criticism out there. So what the speaker really means is, "I think this is a stupid plan," which is a judgmental and therefore unhelpful statement. Now, an I statement version of this sentiment would be, "Would you mind if I offer some other possibilities?" This statement simply suggests the possibility of input without criticizing the listener's ability to plan. The next part of an effective objection is the action you would like to be changed. Now think back to the example objection again that I mentioned. The objection was worded like this: "I felt taken advantage of when you didn't take out the trash in time for the garbage truck." The words "didn't take out the trash in time for the trash truck" is a description of the listener's actions. The listener didn't take out the trash in time. There's no judgment there, and there's no criticism. It's just a simple description of what, in fact, did happen. People go astray in this step when they substitute something else for a description of what happened. For example, instead of saying, I felt taken advantage of when you didn't take out the trash in time for the trash truck, our speaker could have said, I feel taken advantage of because you were lazy. Or, I feel taken advantage of because you were irresponsible and forgot the trash again. Or, I feel taken advantage of because you totally forgot about me. So lazy, irresponsible, and totally forgot about me are all judgments and not actions. There is no action called lazy. And you can't point to someone doing a particular action and say they are doing irresponsible. And totally forgot about me is an assumption, not an action. So mature communicators know the difference between judgments, assumptions, and actual actions. And when they object to something, they stick to actions. So our proper example of a complaint or an objection is, I felt taken advantage of when you didn't take out the trash in time for the trash truck. I would like it if in the future you take out the trash on time. This is a great objection because it finishes on a strong note. It proposes an alternative action. So the positive strong note is, I would like it if in the future you take out the trash on time. So this step is optional. You know, if the other person you're speaking with is easy to talk to and proactive about solving problems with you, it's entirely possible they will propose their own solution that would be just as well or better. Maybe because it's their own solution, it'll work much better than the one that you could propose. But when talking to people who are not proactive or engaged communicators, proposing a solution is often the only way to get to a solution. So like in the step I mentioned a moment ago, the pitfall here is in proposing things that are not actions. Stop being so lazy and learn to take responsibility and think about me for once are not actions. However, could you set reminders so that you can remember to take out the trash on time? Is an action. Listeners will respond in different ways when you communicate with them like this. Mature communicators will respond to an objection phrased this way if in only a few ways. They might say, okay, I'll do that. And they might even use the word sorry in that. And they might say, that solution doesn't work for me. And if they do, that's okay. Then you seek to find a solution that works for both of you. Usually that starts with you asking, why not? In an inviting tone and not an accusatory one, like, why not? And working with the other person to find a solution. So you take out the trash and I'll do the dishes from now on. They might point out some other aspect in the situation with an objection of their own, like, I feel frustrated you're bringing this up with me because this is the first time I've forgotten in the entire year we've been married. Please cut me some slack. And then you, of course, would go back and forth this way, using I statements, describing actions. Remember, we've talked about I statements, I instead of you, and you just go back and forth using the word I describing actions, and using other communication skills until you come to an understanding. The problem is, though, we might not be talking to a mature communicator, right? Our spouse might not have ever been taught how to communicate. If they were neglected or abused by their parents, for instance, they were actively taught bad ways to communicate. And so they might respond by judging your complaint or your objection. They might say, "What a stupid thing to be complaining about." Or, "You're worried about this?" Or they might respond by dismissing you. Yeah, I'll get to it. Leave me alone." Or they might respond by ignoring you entirely. And you know, it's difficult to deal with people who respond this way. If we're not talking about a relationship, like a marriage relationship, like if it's your coworker or friend, you can usually defend your boundary, and you can say, "I don't appreciate my concerns being belittled or dismissed, and I don't appreciate being ignored," and then you can leave them alone for a while. And often by the time you've come back, they've usually come around and everything is okay, like the coworker or friend. But just to be clear, if your spouse is ignoring you, it might be appropriate to give them some space before the subject is talked about again. But I am not encouraging you to give them the silent treatment. I'm just saying it might be best just to give them some space and then come back within a reasonable amount of time and begin to talk about it. So I would suggest that your strategy would be to always do your best to maintain good communication on your end. Relationships are like a rope. Both people have to hold up their end or the relationship falls. But if the relationship is important to you, choosing not to communicate is not a good idea. So what I'm getting at it here is that your mate might not be the best communicator, or they might not be acting like an adult. I just want to encourage you, though, to do the right thing. And instead of resorting to negative things or maybe acting like your mate is acting, again, take the higher road, and in doing so, you will give them the opportunity then to think about it and hopefully choose a better way to respond. But it's not going to help you kind of to drop the rope and just get in the fight with them. So some questions. When communicating, do you have the tendency to criticize, act superior, or be defensive? The next time you have an objection to share with your mate, would you try to use I statements? Here's an assignment. Watch the video 2 times and take a note of things that stand out to you and discuss them with your partner if possible. So the next video, I briefly mentioned the marriage expert John Gottman, and in this next video, we're going to go over John Gottman's 4 predictors of divorce, because again, he did this amazing survey over a number of years with couples, and he's really narrowed it down to 4 things that whenever they are present in our relationship, they're likely to cause the end of that relationship if it's not taken care of.